Hey, everybody, welcome to the 41st episode of the DIB Dive. We are coming to you not so live, only because there's so much happening this week.
I know, yet again.
Yet
I'm so
again.
sorry.
Yet again. But we're still going to cover some timely topics, right?
Yeah.
And all that kind of fun stuff.
So
So,
where are we today that we couldn't be live?
well, I have an audit. I have AS 9100 audit next week. So,
Yeah. So
I've
here
got
comes
that.
compliance, ruining everything as always.
Always. Well, there's also ND-ISAC has a virtual live event all day
That's where I'll
Tuesday.
be.
Yes. So there's a lot going on. Can we totally change topics real quick? Something
Yes,
that's really
absolutely.
been on my mind. Remember when you were a kid and the back of the cereal box was entertaining?
Yes. Their games
Why?
and stuff.
Yeah, why are they not entertaining anymore?
I couldn't tell you the last time I looked in the back of a cereal box, to be
Our
honest.
business partner is across the hallway laughing at us. It's good. It
I
is true.
I do remember they were fun. I remember when they started to like direct you to go to like their websites in the early stage
Yeah,
of the
that's
internet.
bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I was discouraged. I pulled a box of cereal out this morning and sat down. I was all excited to turn it around. I was like, what is this? I don't want to cut out a keychain.
I was
I
gonna
want
say,
to do a
I
word
honestly have
puzzle.
no idea what's on the back of the average cereal box these days.
Well, I got some wild hair last Sunday at the grocery store. I was like, I think I'm gonna have cereal this week, which
Cereal
was
is a great food group.
it is it is. Okay, so we do have some other DIB things to cover, right? DIB.
Yeah, well, there's stuff happening finally.
There is stuff happening.
Give
Well,
us something to talk about.
right. Well, before we get to the fun stuff, there's just some things that I think came across our radar. DHS has some interesting stuff on AI for federal government, critical infrastructure, U.S. economy. So if that's your thing, check it out. I glanced at it. It's not totally pertinent to my day-to-day life. I mean, I know DHS is pretty heavy in some manufacturing and some of the DIB they play in this sandbox. So might be interesting for people to check out.
Yeah, good to see our institutions taking AI seriously and putting thought leadership out there. Yeah,
Yeah,
we appreciate that.
yeah. The other thing I saw, and I was all, maybe I had higher hopes for things like this. You know, when you have to type your email address in and give them your soul before you pull up a report.
Yeah,
I expected a little bit more. But, anyways, this came out SMB Cybersecurity Disconnect, uncovering the risks, challenges, human factors, close the gap for SMBs, presented by LastPass. And I mean, it's got how many pages? 13 pages. And I feel like it's something that maybe I could have done in a PowerPoint if I was in a hurry because they used really big font and they didn't give a whole heck of a lot of data.
yeah. It's like when the teacher said it had to be 2 pages, but they forgot to tell you the font, and you're like, well,
I'm
technically
putting this at
32. It's font
two and a
size.
half inch margins, baby. Yeah.
That's right.
Uh-huh. But it's some of it is a little interesting. I think some of the hot takes are that only 3 in 10 leaders believe their company faces a very high risk of having a cybersecurity issue. So
Who'd they poll
30%.
them? Yeah, okay. That's
I don't know how I
honestly,
feel
it's
about that.
lower than I would think.
That's what I thought. But they interviewed IT leaders and non-IT leaders. So I don't know if that was a mix of people. One
Yeah,
in
I
five
guess.
1 in 5 business leaders admits to circumventing security policies. I like how only
Um,
20% of the people
four of them
admitted
are
it.
4 out of 5 are lying.
Yes. Yes. 1 in 4 younger workers are more likely to break policy. So to that, I say
Okay.
freaking millennials.
Yeah, and it's Zoomers now.
I know. Yeah.
The new workforce
36%
is
of Gen
Zoomers.
Z professionals write down passwords. What the guys? Guys, we're better than our parents. Stop doing that.
It's been coming full circle. I've been, for some reason, this has come up like 3 times this week. We did like an incident response tabletop with someone today, and one of the scenarios I brought up is like on Amazon you can buy like a password notebook. Like people are
Ah,
using them, and honestly,
stop.
people in the security world are saying like, "Hey, this is kind of better than the Excel file on your desktop."
But it's right. But the problem is people are not putting that thing in a safe. They're leaving it right
Yeah, they're
next
just
to their
leaving it by the
keyboard.
desk. Right.
Right.
So the scenario I gave was like Suppose you have one of those people and they put it in their backpack with their laptop and someone steals it. It's like, there they go, full access to the laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. So interesting. Another quick anecdote on that. I talked to a company because like I too was like 3 out of 10. That's lower for people that take it seriously. I have to check my bias at the door because most of the companies I'm talking to take it seriously. Most of our peers in this industry who we're talking to and connecting with are taking it seriously.
Yeah.
I guess it is still pretty prevalent out there that people don't care. And I talked to a company recently where like it was the classic IT reports to the CFO kind of scenario where they're like, hey, we have problems and like there's no MFA, there's like no protection, it's all discombobulated. And every time they ask the CFO, he's like, shut up, go back in your stupid closet, you stupid geeks. I'm like, wow, like there still is that where they're being talked down to like that. I'm like, you probably should get a different job. That sounds like a terrible place to work.
Seriously.
I guess it's still a thing.
Well, yeah. And these are all article links I'll throw in the show notes.
I guess my video was a little out of sync. I think I got it fixed.
I think you're okay now.
All right. It has something to do with when I try to do it in 720 versus 480p. So I was trying to give you guys the HD Andy Sauer experience, but
the HD.
Whatever. Guess we can't bring the stream to you in 4K yet.
Not yet. But if you Venmo us money, we will. Yeah. Just kidding. Don't Venmo me. No, don't do that.
Venmo me money.
Okay, Venmo Andy money. Yeah, so this article I stumbled upon was about small businesses thinking cyber attacks are the biggest threat. And it shows a few charts. This one I think was kind of the saddest of them. Percentage that said their business is one disaster or threat away from shutting down by sector. So 29% of the manufacturers that were surveyed said their business is one disaster or threat. Like of those, to that 29%, I would ask why? Like, what are you doing that's not setting yourself up to be more resilient? What are you not doing, or do you fully not understand any of it to where it would be that big of a problem? I don't know.
Yeah, that is sad, concerning.
Yeah.
Man, what a duplicitous sort of feel I've had lately, because it feels like we're making progress in some areas, but then also like that conversation I just talked about, and then stuff like this, and the last passing you just talked about, like it's 2024.
I know.
Why are we still so poor in our resilience?
Here, you want to talk about better things and happy things?
Maybe.
Okay, well, not yet. So this is another article came across. This DISA Next talks about zero trust across DoD. Of course, this is 2 weeks after the Pentagon, the communication branch previewed strategic goals for 2025-2030. So DISA, the Defense Information Systems Agency, for those keeping track, kind of laid out the 3 top priorities. Talked about DoD-wide enterprise-level solutions. They wanted to build a, quote, common IT environment. If that doesn't terrify you, then nothing will. And then talking about robust cloud computing systems, zero trust cybersecurity. So I guess once everybody's done talking about CMMC, zero trust will be next on our list.
Yeah, we'll have just mastered it by 2029. We can finally start talking about zero trust.
Let's talk about fun things and happy things.
Yeah, all right. So here's the DIB news, which I'm sure we're the last ones to break it.
Yeah.
But if you're not on LinkedIn, one, I don't know how you'd be watching our podcast because we stream this to LinkedIn. And 2, if you're on LinkedIn, you probably have already seen this a little bit. But of course, we saw this come out, the memo that issues a class deviation to contract officers regarding DFAR 7012. Pretty straightforward from what I've read. I was also doing the thing where I was like, I wonder if they snuck any like definition changes or anything in it.
Yes, that's what I did. I saved both versions and then I uploaded it to ChatGPT and asked it to compare for me, and they didn't sneak anything in.
Hey man, that would have been cool and sneaky and would have been way more controversial. Instead, what they did was something incredibly reasonable, very expected in like what we hoped sort of way. It sort of surprised us that it was so simple and so clear.
Yep.
So we have a class deviation that tells contract officers to use the attached version of DFAR 7012, which has only added a line that says we're enforcing NIST 800-171 revision 2, as opposed to the current version of DFARS, which just says NIST 800-171.
Yeah.
Very simple, very effective.
It's kind of wild. I had a letter on my desktop on WinTech letterhead that was ready to go, that when Rev 3 broke loose, if there wasn't going to be a deviation, I was ready to be able to send that to any of my customers that had 7012 flow down to inform them that we were not going to be compliant to Rev 3, but we were going to be compliant to Rev 2. Please confirm receipt of this letter, kind of thing. But now I don't have to use it, so that's pretty exciting.
So does this give you a good warm and fuzzy? Like,
it does. It does. That's what's so wild is, did you look at this and go, wait a minute, this is, like you said, reasonable? It's not a get out of jail card by any stretch of the imagination. It keeps us focused on what we've been trying to do, which is get people geared up for the inevitable.
Like, it gets DoD out of the corner they painted themselves into.
Right.
And it enacts something that they had said pseudo-publicly a couple of weeks ago at one of their DoD DIB events. They were kind of like, yeah, don't really publish this or say a whole lot about it, but like, we're going to do a class deviation. Good to see that, one, it didn't take 5 months, and that they did exactly what they said they were going to do, and that it effectively deals with the problem that, they created, sort of. But I guess NIST kind of has a role in creating the problem and doing the revision and maybe not talking to DoD and coordinating.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to see it.
The conversation that was happening on voice chat yesterday on Discord was actually pretty comical, because we were talking about, like, what does NIST say when they open this? Do they go, foiled?
Yeah, right. Hey, maybe they say, excuse us, we issue the requirements for, protecting CUI. But then NIST would never say that, because they're like, these are guidelines.
Right,
NIST
right.
will tell you that, so.
Yeah, NIST will tell you, we don't do policy. Yeah.
I guess it's up to, like, NARA. Like, what if NARA comes off the top rope right now? It's like, it's Rev 3 for everyone that handles CUI in the federal government.
Oh, don't say things like that. No.
Hey, if you're someone at NARA trying to make a name for yourself, here's your opportunity.
Oh,
you put yourself on the map.
No one will like you if you do that, NARA. Don't do that.
I will, because I love chaos. I enjoy chaos. I can't help it.
Dude.
It's in my character. Call it a character flaw, call it psychopathy, it's just.
No.
I love good chaos.
No. Okay, fine. Then, okay, you love chaos. There is a Facebook CMMC group that has some people in it. And there was a
couldn't imagine a worse place to go.
Don't do it. I got roped in. I got invited. And so I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And I hit accept. And then somebody posted yesterday about the deviation. And the conversation, I'm like, it's one of those things where you close the application, you come back to, you're like, surely I read it wrong. But people are like in meltdown mode. They're like, this is the worst possible security decision.
What?
It's like, what? What are you talking about? So I had to explain that the difference between Rev 2 and Rev 3 is not the national security problem that you think it is. That's first.
Yeah.
And somebody else tried to explain. I got mansplained to at one point. I don't remember what it was, but it was something very basic about explaining to me what flow down was. And the person didn't quite, in my perspective, I don't think they understood the differences between 2 and 3. So I had to kind of stop engaging. But yeah, it's interesting to see some of the chatter about how some people are really freaking out about this. And other people are like, hey, this is super reasonable. And you have to look at why certain people are freaking out. Like, what is it? What is it about your livelihood that you think is threatened here? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that to me presupposes like I think they misunderstood the whole foundation of everything to have such a negative reaction. And apparently, what was causing my video to be terrible was the blur. So
What?
yeah, now
Wow.
it's all synced up. I just turned the blur off, and then you might have seen I closed the door.
Oh, is
But
that
now you
okay?
get to see my newspaper and everything. So I normally don't
Nice.
have
Okay.
this on
What's
display,
the
but
newspaper
whatever.
about? What's the newspaper about?
It's the space shuttle Columbia.
Oh.
I
I
mean,
was
it's
about to
not
say.
cool, but
Oh,
it's like it was something I remember. I saved it when it happened because I was very into
wow.
space and I was in Florida when it happened. It was just like a whole thing. So I always have it there. Honestly, it serves as something of like a reminder of like I'm just going to get very philosophical or something on that level, but it's a good reminder of like what human progress looks like and the price that gets paid.
Yeah.
So I
And
like having it there because every day I walk out of my
paying
office.
attention to the quality control of O-rings under different temperatures.
Well, that's Challenger. This is Columbia.
Ah. Oh. Yeah, you're right.
Columbia was
Ah.
the foam that like hit the wing and
That's
all
right.
that.
That's right.
Yeah,
Man, too many
but
C's.
good reminder for like always sort of grounding. So I love having it there. I've always had it in my office since I got it framed, where it's just like okay,
Nice.
always a good reminder of
Good.
what we're working on as a species. So
Nice.
anyway, so on the whole, with this class deviation, should we explain kind of what the challenge would have been if this hadn't been issued?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, so DFARS today, as written, does not say anything about a specific revision of NIST 800-171. The way most people would interpret DFAR 7012 today is that whatever version is active when you execute that DFARS clause would be what you're required to implement. That would mean if NIST releases Rev 3 tomorrow, any contract executed with DFAR 7012 in it after tomorrow would require you to start immediately getting compliant with Rev 3. If that were the case, and we were continuing down the path with CMMC like we are, which is built on the Rev 2, you would end up in a position where companies are going to start getting certified against Rev 2, doing the Rev 2 requirements, but also being contractually obligated to implement the Rev 3 requirements, for which some are in conflict with Rev 2 and thus CMMC. So you would have had this weird, awkward thing where people are pursuing CMMC at Rev 2, saying they're compliant with Rev 3. They might also have a contract with the Navy that they executed that was on Rev 2, but another contract with the Navy that's on Rev 3. And it's like, okay, which one am I supposed to be doing? It would have been a whole sort of mess. I think this is the only thing that DoD could reasonably do, was to issue this and say, yep, we're going to just stay on Rev 2. Now, I have seen some of the talk on LinkedIn and elsewhere where there's questions around like the indefinite timeline on it, how this is basically continue to use this until we say otherwise, until rescinded.
Mm-hmm. See, that makes a lot of sense to me. Because there's too many other moving parts to this.
That's right.
For them to throw some other sort of date.
You've
only
already
to have
painted
to
yourself
push
in
that
a
out
corner.
again. Yeah.
Don't paint yourself into another corner.
Right.
Exactly. So I think that's smart. And on the whole, Allison and I talked about this a little bit when we first saw this and caught up. These are good signs from a reasonable, thoughtful, potentially changing government. I know it's still government, but man, if they haven't been stacking up some wins in my book lately of the people that I've met, the action they're taking, their response to feedback, especially their response to small business feedback, like how many people that Allison and I have personally gotten to talk to that cared about what we were saying, that listened, that took action on it, stuff like.
Well, but as happy as I am, and as much as I agree with you on that, I'm going to hold my breath and see what happens with the final rule.
Of course, that will be okay. So we'll throw a party if the final rule is like, listen, we read every comment and we made it so much better. Oh, we'll throw them a party. It'll be a whole thing. I'll never speak ill of them again. So
I don't know that you're going to be able to accept a party because of ethics violations.
No,
you know what I mean? I don't think
yeah.
you could have a really cheap party. I think it has to be.
I was gonna say it'd have to be under like $20 or something.
Yeah.
So it'd be cheap, like Natty Light beers or
Little
something.
Caesars pizza and
yeah, something like that. So, but that would be the real sign, honestly, that like things are really changed. That'd be the real blowing of winds of change there. But this gives me a good feel. Like, okay, good.
Yeah.
They're listening. The FedRAMP memo, their feedback, and the alternative courses that are being plotted there is great and good to hear. So I'm in a position of optimism where I've lately been fairly pessimistic in the last year about things and how it's progressing. I also am now like a little more trusting of what they're saying. Like, I think the timeline for CMMC being pre-November, I'm feeling pretty confident that that's going to drop now, because they're like, hey, we understood we have to take this action. Here it is. 2 or 3 weeks later, here's the thing we said we were going to do. It's here. So now I'm thinking, okay, I think they're going to get CMMC out the door.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, excited.
Dun, dun,
It's going to be fun.
It is totally fun. Is that fun? Is that? I don't know about fun.
I'm having fun.
There's a lot of things that are fun. CMMC, I don't know that falls under fun for me.
Fair. Okay, that's fair.
Okay, yeah. But you had some things too you wanted to cover with that national security memo. So now that you've had a time to kind of absorb and mull it over.
Yeah, so the national security memo we talked about last week. I dived into it a bit more, and there were just a couple areas to highlight. I think, again, overall, I'm feeling optimistic. It's really good to see at the highest level this focus. It's good to see increasing capability out of DHS and CISA to pay attention to critical infrastructure, to pay attention to cybersecurity as a national security strategic objective. This is great because I think, change has to happen from the bottom up and the top down. You kind of have to meet everything in the middle, and seeing it come from the White House is great. The content in here, there's a couple interesting things. The first one that really stood out to me was a requirement that's going to the Director of National Intelligence. So there's a requirement within 180 days to produce an intelligence assessment to be brought to the president that covers the threats that face the critical infrastructure of the United States. And then I think it's at least annually after that this has to be reassessed and, again, brought to the president. That's pretty big to me. That's saying, like, this is of such critical importance that the president, him or herself, needs to be briefed on our critical infrastructure and the threats being faced by our infrastructure. So every year, it says in September, the Director of National Intelligence, along with Secretary of Defense, and in consultation with Secretary of Homeland Security, the Director of the FBI, and the SRMAs they talk about, have to bring this assessment. So bring everyone together and brief the president on what our threats are. That's awesome.
Do you ever see that timeline happening even more frequently? I mean, every year, that's a good start, I guess. But I mean, heck, you and we talk quarterly about our own security posture, or we're supposed to talk quarterly about. Okay, sorry, I won't go to that.
Little inside joke there, y'all.
Yeah. But I mean, so yeah, I understand it's kind of like a microcosm and best case scenario, whatever. But do you think that there will ever be a time in our lifetime that these conversations are happening monthly? I mean, surely they are.
I'm sure they are at some level, like maybe not direct with the president, but the president's people, I'm sure, are coordinating.
Yeah.
Up on all this. But I think the fact that it's being submitted to the president, it should get presidential eyes on it, is pretty significant. It's a real recognition of, again, this is a strategic national security objective of the United States. The understanding that our critical infrastructure is being targeted by foreign adversaries who seek to do harm or seek to cause disruption, undermine our democracy. This is something that the president gets briefed on. The second interesting part of this is, first, they say, bring this in a classified form to the highest level of classification necessary to fully characterize the threats. So president's going to get all the juicy details at the highest level of how bad it is, but they are directed to, within 180 days of that publication, to produce and share an unclassified version of the assessment. with all the stakeholders, including private sector partners, to the maximum extent possible and consistent with protection of sources and methods. So that tells me there's going to be threat intelligence being shared with industry out of that report from that conglomerate of influential actors in our government. That's going to be an interesting report to read every year, assuming we'll be in the chain to get it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
you're
do you
right.
think that's going to be potentially CUI?
Ooh. Oh. The plot thickens. I don't know.
Protection of sources and methods kind of implies to
Right?
me it has to be controlled.
Well, yeah, that's I wonder if they'll mark it.
Probably not. The
Or if
government
it's just
doesn't
going to
mark
be
the
CUI and we're all supposed to know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see. So that's some of the big stuff out of there. I think last week we talked a bit about the actual content and like the principles they're using, which again gave me the warm and fuzzies that this to me is clearly written by people who get it. I think the politics aside, this administration's taking the threat seriously and is taking action within their capability set. I know at the highest level of government, it's almost all talk, but they're sending the right message from the top down, saying you have our support for this. We're holding you accountable. In fact, that's one of the principles that they call up is that there needs to be robust accountability and enforcement mechanisms from the Fed down to private sector, down to third parties, and that accountability is a critical, component of protecting our critical infrastructure. So it's sending that message, it's saying the president cares about this from that position all the way down. Take this seriously. It's empowering CISA and DHS to hopefully do what we've talked about a couple times, where it's like all the government has all these different requirements around cybersecurity and everyone's doing different stuff. This seems to give some power to CISA and DHS to start to pull this together and get some cohesion.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this though, and you look at the CERCIA rule, and you kind of feel like there's some things that are not congruent. Because
I get that, but I think this is laying the groundwork for us to start to get, right hand talking to left.
I hope that CISA uses resources already available and helps to maximize the impact that they're making. Because it just seemed to me in the CERCIA incident reporting document in the rule, there just seems to be a lot of duplicate efforts in terms of, we're gonna have DIB companies report these types of incidents, and oh, by the way, you're reporting this to DoD right now, but you're also going to report these things over to us. It's kind of like, hold on, timeout. Can't mom and dad just talk to each other instead of requiring me to give two different people answer? You know what I mean? It just kind of seemed to me, and I might be too much in the weeds here, and I think I'm a little more pessimistic than you are. I've really enjoyed getting to know a lot of the DoD folks over the last year or so, the ones that we've met at ND-ISAC events and GCC, SEC meetings, things like that. But I'm holding my breath on the CISA piece, because I don't know that CISA has been in the weeds like DoD has been of late.
Yeah.
So I feel like DoD's got their ears open. CISA, I'm not sure. I feel like CISA's kind of been given a blank check in a way and been told, what do you want to do?
Yeah, they are also like relatively new. It's probably, I wasn't paying a ton of attention to politics back in the day, but I'm imagining like when DHS was invented post 9/11, there's probably a time where it was like, okay, so what do you guys do here?
Right.
Like, what is your mandate? And I think that's still kind of true today with DHS, because I personally feel that way. I'm kind of like, hold on, why are they different? Like, defense, but I think it's starting to be a little more clear. And I think CISA is probably doing a bit more of the same. And this can be something that really defines CISA going forward.
Yeah.
If they can do what's being requested in this, or being laid out or required or mandated, whatever the term is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the other principles brought up is policy alignment, which is exactly what we just sort of talked about. We need to take efforts to integrate and coordinate and align the policies that are coming from different aspects of the federal government and state governments and local governments. Like, get everyone on the same page for, more effective security if we're not having to juggle all this BS.
Yeah.
So if CISA can come out and have an impact on that sort of thing, it may be following DoD's lead and saying like, hey, DoD has, I'm not going to say this, but like they might say this. They might say DoD has a great program in play with CMMC, and maybe we'll just say mandate for the federal government. Yeah. I think we're already seeing some signs of that. And I think I'm going to say this, and I'm controversial to myself here. I guess I'd rather have CMMC be the standard than have 20 different standards. Not that I love CMMC as a standard.
No, I follow you. Yeah, I follow you. Yeah.
So all said, I'm feeling hopeful. I think that's kind of my thesis today is the changes we're seeing at the micro level and the conversations we're having, the people that have been shifted around in the government, the way they're interacting with industry and the action they're taking out of conversations is giving me hope. I'm happy to see our chief executive paying attention and authorizing efforts to improve security, certainly in the critical infrastructure world. I think that things are happening that are good. You bring up a phenomenal point, which is a lot depends on that CMMC rule and how they respond to the lengthy and many comments they've received. If we see a true good faith effort to meet industry where industry is at, and they correct a lot of the mistakes and misunderstandings laid out in their new rule, we could start feeling really good and get some trust back in that institution that a lot of us feel like, I've lost trust in.
Yeah, that's good analysis. Anything else on your radar over the next few days?
No, I'm sorry we're not live. I always enjoy our live shows a bit more than recording. It's just nice to chat with people and respond to the comments in real time and whatnot. But it is what it is. We're busy, and May's going to be pretty busy. We have some exciting stuff going on. It's going to be great when NIST finally drops Rev 3. We'll have content for many weeks to dive into.
Your version of fun is just weird, man. I
am who I am.
Yeah.
For better or worse. Mostly worse.
No. All right. Well, on that note, I guess we'll wrap up. But are we going to be live next week? Maybe. I don't know. If we're not,
wouldn't you like to know?
Wouldn't you like to know? Anyway,
you'll find out next Tuesday
you will
at 1 p.m.
Dun dun dun. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We are here mostly live, mostly weekly,
most often.
So come join us 1:00 Eastern on Tuesdays on LinkedIn, and we'll see you soon. Have a good week.
See y'all.